Okay, next we have Ian Rintoul, who's a long-term activist and a founding member of the Refugee Action Coalition that was created in 1999. So the Refugee Action Coalition are a community activist organisation that organised this protest and organised many other forums and events to promote refugee rights. There'll be buckets going around because this community activist organisation is made up of volunteers, and we need support to help run a lot of these events. And there's also petitions that you can sign that will be going around too. So Ian Rintoul is a no media commentator, especially on the recent incidents about the sunken boat offshore, which was horrific, and the Egyptian asylum seeker with the Interpol situation. So please welcome Ian to the...
Okay, thanks very much, Jess, and thanks for everyone for turning out today. I don't know whether anyone else noticed, but on Friday, the New Zealand government introduced mandatory detention and also temporary protection visas. And it is a terrible shame. But if you want to know one reason why we're here, is because Julia Gillard's legacy is New Zealand's policy. What Julia Gillard is going to leave behind, and I think she is going to leave it behind in September, but she's going to leave behind a string of countries like New Zealand that, because of the policies, the Pacific solution that she's implemented, we're going to have New Zealand, Nauru, Indonesia, and I've forgotten the other one, Papua New Guinea, in terms of the Refugee Convention, of actually subverting the Refugee Convention. And her legacy will be a string of penal colonies around the Pacific and more countries which are going to adopt the same kind of policies that we've got here. And it is a terrible shame. I mean, it's almost indescribable to think that the Labor Party actually won in 2007 on the basis of opposing John Howard, and that they're going to lose in 2013 on the basis of adopting every single one of John Howard's anti-refugee policies. Now, you don't need to be a political scientist to work out the stupidity of that. If we'd had since 2007 to 2013 a government which systematically implemented humanitarian policies, then perhaps this election in September would look very, very different. And we're here to say very loudly and very clearly that although I do believe that the fact that first Kevin Rudd and then Julia Gillard followed the Howard policies, the whole way down the track, and has left Tony Abbott sitting in the wings, they should not think that there is not an Australian community and a refugee movement which is going to allow that to go unchallenged. What we've seen in terms of some people know about the Paul Sayed, the Egyptian so-called terrorist, so quickly condemned by the Immigration Department, by the Federal Police and by coalition MPs. Well, let me tell you, because it is a microcosm of what happens here, that the Immigration Department knew every detail about Sayed 12 months ago when he came. So honest is he explained everything that had happened, including the convictions in Egypt at the hands of a corrupt military court under the Mubarak regime. 12 months ago, the Federal Police in October had documents in October, and yet we still find out Sayed and his family are still in Villawood, still condemned on the basis of false accusations made by that military court. I don't think it's going to last very long, but it's not going to last long because we can trust the Immigration Department to do the right thing. It's not going to last very long because it's people who have gathered around to understand the way this system works and have been prepared to challenge it, and will continue to challenge it. And if you want to know, Tony Abbott is sitting there with his temporary protection visas and his toe-back policy. Well, we know what that meant under the Howard government. More people died at sea. They died at sea because of the temporary protection visas, and women and families in particular got on boats in greater numbers to actually get to Australia because there was no other way. But over the toe-back policy, maybe people don't know that, but people died at sea deliberately on the basis of the toe-back policy that was implemented by the Howard government. One boat was actually towed back and beached on an Indonesian island. 2 people died getting off the boat because it was about 200 metres out to sea, getting off the boat, trying to get to that island itself. That's what Tony Abbott represents, and that's why we are going to fight tooth and nail against any policy that Tony Abbott actually tries, to implement in that regard. But if you want to know something about the little connections, the tragedy is that there are connections between the Immigration Department and the Liberal Party. If you want to know Greg Sheridan, the little hired gun for the Australian, and the pernicious stuff that he turns out, the retired, sort of assessor, RAC assessor, this person in the Immigration Department, Bob Carell, the former manager of immigration in Sydney here, now works in Scott Morrison's office. That says something about immigration and why the Labor Party, when it won in 2007, should have cleaned out the Bob Carells and those other bureaucrats who still sit in the immigration department. $7.5 billion. The Labor Party has got, may not be the Labor Party now, but they have budgeted for $7.5 billion for detention over the next 4 years. $7.5 billion. That's more than they spent for the housing stimulus. Imagine if that $7.5 billion was actually invested to provide the housing, to provide the education, the medical resources, and everything else, not just for the refugees, but for the whole of the community. They say they don't know where the money's coming from. The money can come out of their detention regime. I just wanted to finish. I know it has been a very difficult week, and it's difficult to sit day after day and see this kind of stuff which comes out, of the government and out of the Immigration Department, and the stories and the crocodile tears about, people who are lost at sea. And I say crocodile tears, I already mentioned Howard's policies, but there has always been one thing that the Labor Party and the Coalition won't do, and that is to process people in Indonesia and guarantee there's a safe alternative way to guarantee resettlement out of Indonesia and to Australia. And until they adopt that, then the crocodile tears that they shed about safety life at sea will always be crocodile tears. The humanitarian concerns, the welfare asylum seekers are at the bottom of their agenda and not at the top where it should be. But I just wanted to end because I think it's difficult not to be despondent about the situation. But we've got rallies around the country today, and we've got rallies that will happen next weekend as well, because there are tens of thousands of people who understand what is happening with refugees and are determined to make a difference in the weeks and the months ahead. But the absurdity, have a look at the bit of ground alongside you at the moment. It looks like Aboriginal ground, it looks like Town Hall, it looks like Australia, but if you are someone who arrived by boat, that bit of dirt that you're sitting on or standing on at the moment is not Australia. It's excised, and I think that actually says, excised from the effects of the Migration Act, and I think says something about the Alice in Wonderland politics that we've actually had, coming out of Canberra. But it is no time for despondency. We're here to tell Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott that we are determined to unexcise this country and this community from the pernicious effects of their anti-refugee policies. And from here and today, there's a little bit of unexcised territory around Town Hall and in the streets when we march shortly, around Sydney. But we are absolutely determined, in the same kind of way that we had to fight John Howard and had to fight him to a halt, that bit by bit we will unexcise the Australian community and Australia from their pernicious effects. School by school, workplace by workplace, street by street, we will make Australia a welcome refugee community.
Thank you so much, Ian, and for your long-term and hard work. Free, free the refugees. 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 Thank you, everyone. So we've got a few